Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with a conversation on Braver Angels. For that, we welcome Casey Jorgensen with the Utah chapter of Braver Angels and Troy Williams with Quality Utah to the show. So great to have both of you here. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Glenn.
Casey, let's start with you. Give us a little background and information on Braver Angels. What is it? What's it all about?
So the organization was started in 2016, right after the presidential election, when two friends, one a red and a blue, or conservative liberal.
Was there a lot of divide during that election?
You know, you might have heard that there was a little rancor. Anyway, they came together and they realized it was as though our country was going through a national divorce, and they wondered what they could do. They reached out to a friend of theirs who does marriage counseling, and they got talking about how those principles that maybe can help divorcing couples could help a divorcing nation. And so they created something called a Red Blue Workshop. They brought together some Clinton supporters and some Trump supporters who, to begin with, were shooting darts at each other across the room. And by the end of, I think it was about a 13-hour workshop, they were friends, and they said, we're onto something here, and it's grown since then.
Yeah, fascinating. You two represent different ideologies on the political spectrum, so you're an example of coming together and finding solutions.
And we like each other.
Yeah, we can tell. Troy, talk about the move to bring Equality Utah in, and specifically LGBTQ issues on this effort.
Yeah, well, I think Utah as a state has really been forward-thinking in grappling with issues around LGBTQ rights and religious liberty. In 2015, we passed a historic piece of legislation. Across the country, people thought that the divide between religious rights and LGBT rights was irrevocable, that they couldn't be bridged. But here in Utah, we proved that they could be. And so that became this kind of a model of collaboration that's been really successful in Utah, generally speaking. And so I was able to go to Gettysburg for the Braver Angels conference and actually share the success that we've had in Utah with the rest of the country.
Okay. Casey, talk about what it's been like for you to come together with people from the other side of the aisle in this arena, and what have you seen? How have you grown from that?
You know, it's been fantastic to become dear, dear friends with people who have very different political views, and to realize, you know, they care about their children, they care about our country, they're just getting up every morning trying to do what they feel is best, just like we are. And to be able to disagree but still respect each other and to care about each other's people, and just to help with the polarization in our nation has been fantastic.
Yeah. Troy, let's go back to the Gettysburg Convention. You had an opportunity to present there. Talk to us about what you presented, and what that experience was like.
Yeah, well, we talked about the 2015 Utah Compromise, and we talked about how important it is to sit down across the table from people with whom you have genuine disagreement and see if you can discover a thread of common ground to build upon. And so we were able to sort of explore the success that we've had in the state. I talked a little bit about how Equality Utah recently, just a couple months ago, went to the Utah GOP State Convention, and we had a booth there, and we're sitting talking to delegates so that we could understand each other. There's a lot of inflamed tensions around these issues, and there's so many forces that are pushing us to divide us. We have these merchants of outrage, I like to call them. They are these conflict entrepreneurs who profit off of our social divisions. We have social media algorithms that reward conflict and hate. We have partisan cable news that's trying to pit us against each other, and it's putting a strain on our democracy. It's putting a strain in our families, because we all have someone in our family that we love who voted for the other guy for president, right? And so these divisions are making it almost impossible for us to get together and solve big problems.
During this last legislative session, there were issues that you and other lawmakers were seemingly completely divided on, and somehow it came together by the end of the year. That would be an example of what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, we had big debates and disagreements in the last legislative session, particularly around transgender youth.
Yeah.
But then we were able to, we didn't just like yell at each other and turn away from each other. We stayed at the table and were able to codify a ban on conversion therapy unanimously in both the House and the Senate. And it's a rarity in American politics. But it happens when we stay invested with each other, when we stay engaged with each other. We need different points of view to be grappling with difficult issues, because no side has a monopoly on truth, right? And I think it was Wilbur Wright who said that no truth is so pure that it has no error in it, and no error is so false that it has no mixture of truth. So we need to have debates. We need to be able to see the blind spot of the other side and actually contribute to the dialogue, so we can sift through and pull out the best ideas to solve our problems.
Casey, you were at the convention we mentioned as well. There was a big Utah presence there.
Yes.
The governor spoke, Troy spoke.
Yeah.
Talk about what that experience was like.
Oh yeah, Utah was really well represented. Elder Corbett from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints spoke as well, and we had the breakout session called the Utah Way. Governor Cox was so well received. He received a standing ovation partway through his address. I had Blues come up to me after and say he would make a great president. So it was really a great moment for Utah.
In fact, it even broke into a segment called the Utah Way.
Right.
How did that go over? What was discussed there?
So that was the breakout session that I helped facilitate, that Troy was at, along with Paul Edwards, and they had just talked about the Utah Compromise. And
Okay, so we have this idea where we need to come together, and Troy, you just gave some examples of how we've done that, but it's hard to envision that on the national level at this point. So how do you bring together reality on that and really make a difference to move the needle, because that's not easy right now.
Right. So Braver Angels has workshops that people are, they're free, that people are able to attend either online or in person, where we have people who come from opposite sides of the aisle, and we help them, facilitate a discussion. We also have some skills building workshops where we can teach them how to have that dialogue outside of the workshops.
And so the idea is at a grassroots level, this can come up and eventually make a difference at some point?
Yeah, oh, it's already making a difference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Give me some examples of how.
I'm actually also an employee of Braver Angels on a national level. I organize their national workshops, and so I get to sit in on those, and I'll watch people come in. This one workshop in particular, called a Red Blue Workshop, to begin with, where I see people coming and saying, I know I have a problem. I have such hatred towards the other side. And at the end of 7 hours, you wouldn't recognize them. They want to get to know the other side. They're excited. They're saying, I didn't realize these things about them, and I want to know more.
Okay. Troy, what are you seeing on the national scale when it comes to what you're able to do in the state and get things done federally?
Well, I'm concerned about this growing culture of contempt that exists in American politics right now. When you get hired at Equality Utah, I give all my new employees a book from Arthur Brooks called Love Your Enemies. And he talks a lot about how in a conflict, each side believes that they are motivated by love, but the other side is motivated by hate and contempt and fear. And so I find when I engage with people on the opposite side of an issue, if I recognize that they believe genuinely that they're coming from a place of love, that shifts how I interact with them and how I can engage with them. And if we can move past this culture of contempt to see the humanity of the people with whom we disagree, then we can get collaborative. Then we can come to the table and solve problems. No one party is going to be able to solve all the problems of the world.
Right.
And if we have contempt for each side, we'll never be across each other at the table to solve problems regarding climate change, homelessness, immigration reform. So we've got to get past this to see each other as Americans who care about this country and want to solve these problems together.
All right, and that wraps us full circle to that marriage counseling.
Right.
We've got to come back together.
All right, hey, fascinating conversation. Thanks for what you were doing, and thanks for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Glenn.
Still to come, President Biden will be making a stop in Utah